3 years of marriage ended with the uncapping of a fountain pen. Most women in her position would have screamed, thrown the baccarat crystal vase against the wall, or begged for a second chance. Dominic Barros, the youngest billionaire in New York, expected tears. He expected a scene. He had his lawyer on standby and security in the hallway. But Serafina didn't cry. She didn't argue. She looked at the papers, looked at him, and offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A smile that was terrifyingly calm. That was the moment Dominic should have been afraid. He thought he was getting rid of a burden. He had no idea he was severing the lifeline that kept his entire empire afloat. The air conditioning in the corner office of Barros Enterprises was set to a crisp 68 degrees, but Dominic Barros was sweating. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit, glancing at the woman sitting across from him, Serafina, his wife of 3 years. She was wearing that simple beige cardigan. He hated the one that made her look more like a librarian than the wife of a tech mogul. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, loose strands framing a face that was devoid of makeup. She looked plain. That was the problem, Dominic told himself. She was just too plain. She didn't fit the magazines. She didn't fit the galas. And she certainly didn't fit the new life he was building with Isabella. The terms are generous, Serafina, Dominic said, his voice smooth but lacking warmth. He pushed the thick document across the mahogany desk. The penthouse in Seattle, a monthly alimony of $10,000 for 5 years, and you keep the Honda. I think that's more than fair considering you signed a prenup. He watched her carefully. Serafina sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. She looked at the papers as if they were a menu at a restaurant she wasn't particularly hungry for. Isabella is moving in on Monday, Dominic added, twisting the knife. He wanted a reaction. He needed her to be the crazy ex-wife so he could justify what he was doing. I need you out by Sunday night. The lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Garrison, who charged $800 an hour, shifted uncomfortably. Even he thought that was harsh. Serafina finally looked up. Her eyes, usually a warm hazel, looked almost black in the dim office lighting. She didn't blink. Monday, she repeated softly. Her voice wasn't shaky. It was level, cold. Yes. Look, Sierra, we've grown apart. I'm running a global empire now. I need a partner who understands that world. You're happy with your books and your gardening. We're just different people. Different, she echoed. Then, the corners of her mouth twitched. Dominic braced himself for the sobbing. Instead, she smiled. It wasn't a bitter smile. It wasn't sarcastic. It was the kind of smile a parent gives a toddler who claims they're running away from home. It was a smile of absolute, pitying amusement. She reached into her purse, a worn leather tote that had seen better days, and pulled out a cheap ballpoint pen. She didn't even use the gold Mont Blanc he offered her. Scratch. She signed her name, Serafina A. Barros. Done, she said, sliding the papers back. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. You're right, Dom. We are different. You chase value. I build it. Dominic frowned. What is that supposed to mean? It means, she said, walking toward the door without looking back, that you should check the expiration dates on your contracts. All of them. She walked out. No tears, no begging, no fight. Dominic let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He slumped back in his chair, laughing nervously. Well, Garrison, that was easier than I thought. She's probably in shock. Garrison was flipping through the signed papers, his brow furrowed. Mr. Barros, did you ever ask her what the A in her middle name stood for? Dominic waved a hand dismissively. Anne, Alice. Something boring. Who cares? Call Isabella. Tell her the house is hers. But as Dominic looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, a strange knot tightened in his stomach. Serafina's smile haunted him. It wasn't the smile of a woman who had lost everything. It was the smile of a woman who had just been released from a cage. The penthouse on Fifth Avenue was quiet. It was a sterile, modern silence. Lots of glass, marble, and chrome. Serafina moved through the walk-in closet, packing. She didn't take much. She left the diamond earrings Dominic had bought her for their first anniversary. the ones he'd bought his assistant a matching pair of. She left the designer dresses he'd forced her to wear to charity events, the ones that were always too tight and too flashy. She packed her jeans, her worn sweaters, her old laptop, and a small, locked metal box she kept hidden in the back of the safe. She paused by the bedside table. There was a photo of them from 5 years ago, back when Dominic was just a coder with a dream and a mountain of debt, and she was the waitress paying for his server space. He looked at her with adoration then. Now, he looked at her like a stain on his lapel. She placed the photo face down. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from a contact saved simply as the architect. Message. The board is convening in Zurich on Tuesday. Are you attending? Serafina typed back, I'll be there. And initiate Protocol 0 on the Barros account. The architect. Are you sure? That will liquidate him. Serafina looked around the room one last time. She thought about the nights she stayed up editing his pitch decks, because his grammar was atrocious. She thought about the anonymous angel investor she had arranged to save his company from bankruptcy in 2021, money that came from her own inheritance, funneled through 3 shell companies so his fragile ego wouldn't bruise. She thought about Isabella, the swimsuit model, who had accidentally sent her a photo of Dominic in her bed last week. Serafina, I'm sure. Pull the plug. She zipped up her single suitcase. As she walked to the elevator, the front door opened. Dominic walked in, Isabella clinging to his arm. Isabella was stunning, undeniably. Tall, blonde, wearing a red dress that cost more than Serafina's car. Oh, Isabella said, feigning surprise. You're still here? Dom said. You'd be gone by now. It's a little awkward, isn't it? Dominic loosened his tie, looking annoyed. Sarah, just leave the key on the counter. Don't make this dramatic. Serafina stopped. She looked at Isabella. The marble in the foyer is slippery when wet. Be careful in those heels. Excuse me? Isabella scoffed. And Dominic. Serafina turned to her ex-husband. You take your coffee with 2 sugars and a splash of oat milk, but you're allergic to almond milk. Make sure she knows that. The last time you had almond milk, your throat closed up. I know how to take care of my man, Isabella snapped, clutching Dominic's arm tighter. Good, Serafina said, because he's going to need a lot of care very soon. She stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, cutting off the sight of Dominic's confused frown. As she stepped out of the building, a matte black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb. The doorman, who had never seen such a car in front of the building before, gaped. A driver in a pristine uniform stepped out and opened the rear door. Good evening, Madame Sterling. To the airport? Yes, Arthur, Serafina said, shedding the cardigan to reveal a silk blouse underneath. Her posture shifted. The slumped shoulders of the tired housewife vanished, replaced by the steel spine of a predator. To the airport, the private hangar. She slid into the car. The heavy door thudded shut, sealing out the noise of New York, the noise of Dominic, and the noise of the lie she had lived for 3 years. Serafina Sterling, the hidden matriarch of the Sterling dynasty, a family that made the Rockefellers look like small business owners, was finally back. 3 days later, Dominic Barros walked into his office feeling like a king. He was a bachelor again. He had Isabella on his arm. His company, Barros Tech, was about to sign a partnership with the European conglomerate Aurora Holdings that would triple his stock value. Morning, team, he shouted as he breezed past the cubicles. Nobody answered. Dominic stopped. The office was buzzing, but not with the usual productivity. People were huddled in groups, whispering. Phones were ringing off the hook, and nobody was answering them. What is going on? Dominic barked. His CFO, a sweating man named Marcus, came running out of his office. He looked like he was about to vomit. Dom, you need to see this. Dominic followed him into the conference room. On the giant screen, the stock market ticker for Barros Tech, Barro, was flashing red. A steep, vertical line pointed downward. We're down 12%, Marcus said, his voice trembling. 12%? Since when? The market opened 20 minutes ago, Dominic yelled. Why? The Aurora deal, Marcus whispered. They pulled out. What? Dominic slammed his hands on the table. They can't pull out. We have a verbal agreement. I had dinner with their VP last week. They sent a formal letter this morning, Marcus said, handing over a tablet. They cited unstable leadership and ethical misalignment as the reasons. But Dom, that's not the worst part. What could be worse than losing the Aurora deal? The bank. Global Trust called. They're calling in the loans. Dominic froze. Which loans? The startup loans? The expansion loans? The Series B funding? All of it. Apparently, there was a clause in the contract. A guarantor clause. As long as the primary guarantor was associated with the company, the interest rate was 0, and the repayment timeline was flexible. The moment the guarantor was removed, the full amount became due immediately. Dominic felt the blood drain from his face. I'm the guarantor. I founded this company. No, Marcus shook his head, pulling up a file. You weren't. You didn't have the credit score back then. Remember? You had that bankruptcy from your college days? Then who signed for it? Marcus pointed to the signature at the bottom of the old, yellowing PDF on the screen. Dominic squinted. Guarantor. S.A. Sterling. Sterling? Dominic muttered. Who is Sterling? I don't know any Sterling. My wife signed. Wait. He flashed back to the divorce papers. Serafina A. Barros. Get me the marriage license, Dominic ordered, his voice rising to a panic. Get me the damn marriage license from 3 years ago. Marcus scrambled on his laptop. A moment later, the image popped up. Bride. Serafina Ann Sterling. Dominic stared at the name. Sterling. Sterling, he whispered. Like, the Sterling Group? The banking family? The ones who own half of London? It's a common name, Marcus said, trying to be hopeful. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe she's just a distant cousin. She drove a Honda, Marcus. She clipped coupons for groceries, Dominic yelled, pacing the room. She wore sweaters from Target. There is no way my frumpy ex-wife is a Sterling heiress. Just then, Dominic's phone rang. It was Isabella. Dom, she shrieked. My credit card was declined. I'm at Prada. It was so embarrassing. Not now, Bella, Dominic snapped. And there are men here at the penthouse, she continued, her voice rising. Movers. They say they're taking the furniture. What? I own that furniture. They showed me a receipt, Dom. It says all the interior decor, the art, the rugs, the Italian sofas, was purchased by someone named S. Sterling, and was on loan to the residents. They're taking the bed. Dominic dropped the phone. The office door swung open. Garrison, the lawyer, burst in. He looked pale. Mr. Barros, we have a problem with the patent for the flagship chip, the Omni processor. What about it? Dominic asked, feeling like the room was spinning. I invented it. You designed the casing, Garrison corrected. But the code, the underlying algorithm that makes it work, we just got a cease and desist. From who? From a shell company called Blue Heron LLC. They claim ownership of the source code. They have timestamps, Dom, dating back 4 years. The code was written on a device registered to, Garrison swallowed hard, your home IP address, but not your computer. Dominic sank into a chair. He remembered late nights, him complaining about a bug in the code he couldn't fix, and Serafina, bringing him tea, looking over his shoulder. Have you tried routing the syntax through a recursive loop? She would ask softly. You don't understand code. Sarah, go back to bed, he would snap. And the next morning, the code would be fixed. He always assumed he had done it in his sleep, or that he was just a genius. She wrote it, Dominic whispered. The horror was cold, trickling down his spine like ice water. She wrote the code. She bought the furniture. She guaranteed the loans. Mr. Barros, his secretary, buzzed in over the intercom. You have a call on line 1. It's the CEO of Aurora Holdings. Dominic lunged for the phone. This was his chance. He could fix this. If he could just talk to the CEO, man to man, he could explain. Hello? This is Dominic Barros. A voice came through the line. It was a woman's voice. Smooth, authoritative, and terrifyingly familiar. Hello, Dominic. It wasn't the voice of the housewife in the beige cardigan. It was the voice of a titan. Sarah? Dominic choked out. This is Miss Sterling, she corrected. I'm calling to inform you that Aurora Holdings will be acquiring Barrows Tech's debt. We will be seeing you at the shareholder meeting on Friday. Do try to wear a tie. The board prefers professionalism. Sarah, wait, please. We can talk about this. We already talked, Dominic, she said. You wanted someone who understands your world. I'm just showing you my world. Click. The line went dead. Dominic looked at his team. They were all looking at him, the genius billionaire, with a mixture of pity and fear. He wasn't the genius. He was the parasite, and the host had just detached him. The annual Metamorphosis Ball at the Metropolitan Museum of Art was the single most important night on the New York social calendar. It was where alliances were forged, enemies were destroyed, and net worths were measured by the square inch of diamonds on a neckline. Dominic Barros adjusted his tuxedo in the reflection of the limo window. He was running on 3 hours of sleep and 4 espressos. The last 48 hours had been a nightmare of legal notices and plummeting stock prices, but tonight he had to pretend everything was perfect. Stop fidgeting, Dom, Isabella snapped. She was wearing a custom-made silver gown that shimmered like fish scales. It was beautiful, but it was aggressive. She looked less like a queen and more like a weapon. The paparazzi are right outside. If you look sweaty, they'll say you're guilty. I'm not guilty of anything, Dominic muttered, wiping his forehead. I'm the victim of a vindictive ex-wife. Well, fix it, Isabella said, checking her makeup in her compact. I didn't leave my soccer star boyfriend for a bankrupt tech bro. You promised me a yacht, not a foreclosure notice. Dominic gritted his teeth. We are not foreclosing. I just need to secure a new investor tonight. If I can get billionaire Thomas Kincaid to back the Omni processor, Sierra's little game with the bank won't matter. The car stopped. Flashbulbs erupted like lightning as they stepped onto the red carpet. Dominic put on his best Titan of Industry smile, guiding Isabella through the gauntlet. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Barros, is it true Barros Tech is under audit? Dominic, who owns the patent for your new chip? Isabella, who are you wearing? They ignored the questions about business and answered the ones about fashion. It was a fragile shield, but it held. Inside, the great hall was transformed into a garden of winter ice. White roses hung from the ceiling, and the champagne flowed like water. The elite of the city were their senators, heiresses, oil tycoons. Dominic scanned the room for Thomas Kincaid. He spotted the elderly billionaire near the Temple of Dendur, sipping whiskey. Stay here, Dominic told Isabella. Look pretty. Don't talk to the press. He made a beeline for Kincaid. Thomas, good to see you. Wonderful event, isn't it? Thomas Kincaid, a man who had made his fortune in steel and didn't suffer fools, looked at Dominic over the rim of his glass. His eyes were cold. Dominic, Kincaid grunted, I heard you're having some domestic troubles. Just a minor restructuring, Dominic lied smoothly. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I'm opening up a Series C funding round for the Omni processor. It's a guaranteed 10x return. Kincaid swirled his drink. The Omni processor? Is that the tech that is currently flagged for intellectual property theft? Dominic stiffened. That's just a misunderstanding. My ex-wife, she's confused. She thinks she contributed, but you know how it is. They type a few emails and think they're Steve Jobs. Kincaid didn't laugh. He looked past Dominic's shoulder, his eyes widening slightly. I don't think she looks confused, son. Dominic turned around. The entire room had gone quiet. The chatter, the clinking of glasses, the laughter, it all died down in a wave of hushed silence that swept from the grand staircase across the room. Descending the stairs was a woman. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged her frame, trailing behind her like a shadow. Around her neck sat a necklace that made the chandeliers look dim, a cascade of sapphires and diamonds that looked heavy enough to crush a lesser person. But it was the woman herself who commanded the silence. Her hair, usually messy, was sleek and straight, falling to her waist. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating eyes that scanned the room with the precision of a sniper. It was Serafina, but it wasn't the Serafina Dominic knew. The slouch was gone. The hesitation was gone. She walked with a terrifying grace, one hand resting lightly on the arm of a tall, imposing man in a tuxedo. Is that, someone whispered near Dominic, is that the Sterling heiress? I didn't know the Sterlings were in New York, another voice hissed. Dominic felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He walked toward her, unable to stop himself. Sarah? She reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She stopped a few feet away from him. The man beside her, handsome, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like ice, stepped slightly in front of her, protective but not overbearing. Hello, Dominic, Serafina said. Her voice was different, too. It carried. It had the timbre of money. What are you doing here? Dominic hissed, conscious of the hundreds of eyes on them. You hate parties. You hate crowds. You said they were shallow. I hate your parties, Dominic, she corrected, a small, polite smile playing on her lips. Because your parties are full of people trying to be someone they aren't. In my circle, we don't have to try. Isabella marched up, sensing the attention shifting away from her. She looked Serafina up and down, sneering. Nice dress. Did you rent it? The man beside Serafina let out a dry, short laugh. Serafina turned her gaze to Isabella. It wasn't a look of jealousy. It was the look a human gives a noisy insect. This is an archival piece from the 1920s, Serafina said softly. It belonged to my great-grandmother. The necklace, however, is new. A divorce present to myself. And who is this? Dominic demanded, gesturing to the man. Your new boy toy? You moved on fast. The man stepped forward. He towered over Dominic. I suggest you watch your tone, Mr. Barros. I am Sebastian Sterling, Serafina's brother. Dominic froze. Brother? Sebastian, Dominic stammered. I didn't know she had a brother. There is a lot you don't know, Sebastian said coolly. Like the fact that you are currently standing in the Sterling wing of the museum. My family donated this hall in 1995. We are technically your hosts tonight, the crowd murmured. Dominic felt the heat rising in his neck. He looked at Kincaid, hoping for an ally. Kincaid was raising his glass to Serafina. Miss Sterling, Kincaid called out. I received your proposal regarding the acquisition of the lithium mines in Nevada. Brilliant strategy. Thank you, Thomas, Serafina nodded. We can discuss the details over lunch on Tuesday. Dominic felt his reality fracturing. She wasn't just a rich heiress. She was a player who was stealing his potential investors right in front of him. You played me, Dominic whispered, stepping closer to her, his voice shaking with rage. You lied to me for 3 years. You pretended to be nobody. Serafina's expression hardened. For a second, the mask slipped, and he saw the pain beneath the diamonds. I didn't pretend to be nobody, Dom. I pretended to be normal, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. I wanted to be loved for me, not for my last name, not for my checkbook. I wanted to build a life with someone who valued my mind, not my connections. I gave you everything, my time, my code, my patience, and you threw it away because I didn't look good enough in a bikini for your Instagram. She stepped back, the ice returning to her eyes. Enjoy the party, Dominic. I hear the hors d'oeuvres are expensive. You might want to fill up. I'm freezing your personal accounts at midnight. She walked away, Sebastian at her side, leaving Dominic standing alone in the center of the room. Isabella looked at him, then at the retreating figure of Serafina. Is she serious? Isabella hissed. About the accounts? Dominic didn't answer. He just watched his ex-wife float away, realizing for the first time that the plain woman he had divorced was the only thing that had made him a king. The fall of Dominic Barros was not a sudden crash. It was a slow, agonizing suffocation. Monday morning, the locks on the Barros Tech building were changed. Dominic stood on the sidewalk, banging on the glass doors. Let me in. This is my company. I am the CEO. A security guard he didn't recognize stood on the other side, arms crossed. ID badge doesn't work, sir. Access denied. I am the founder, Dominic screamed, kicking the door. Passers-by were filming him. Number Barros meltdown was already trending on Twitter. Marcus, his CFO, came out the side door, holding a box of his personal belongings. He looked exhausted. Marcus, get me inside, Dominic yelled. I can't, Dom, Marcus said, not meeting his eyes. The board voted this morning. An emergency session. You've been ousted. Ousted? On what grounds? Gross negligence, misappropriation of funds, and fraud. Fraud? The patent issue, Marcus said, shifting the box. It turns out the original IP filing for the Omni processor lists Sterling as the creator. You signed an affidavit claiming it was yours. That's perjury, Dom. The SEC is involved. Dominic felt his knees buckle. He sat down on the concrete planter outside the building he had built. Who is the new CEO? Marcus hesitated. An interim CEO has been appointed by the majority shareholder. Who is the majority shareholder? Aurora Holdings. Serafina. Dominic put his head in his hands. She had taken his house. She had taken his money. Now, she had taken his baby. He went home, or rather, to the hotel he was staying in, since the penthouse locks had also been changed. He opened the door to the suite to find Isabella packing a Louis Vuitton trunk. Where are you going? Dominic asked, his voice hollow. Paris, Isabella said, not looking up. Fashion Week. Bella, I need you. I'm losing everything. She zipped the bag shut and stood up. She looked at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. Dom, let's be real. This was a transaction. You bought youth and beauty. I bought security and status. Your check bounced. The transaction is void. I loved you, Dominic said. You loved that I made you look good, she corrected. Serafina loved you, and look what you did to her. Isabella walked to the door. By the way, you should check the news. Someone leaked the voicemails you left Serafina last year, the ones where you called her pathetic and useless. Who leaked them? Does it matter? You're radioactive, Dom. Goodbye. She slammed the door. Dominic turned on the TV. It was everywhere. His face, his angry voicemails. The narrative had shifted completely. He wasn't the brilliant young billionaire anymore. He was the abusive husband who had leeched off a secret genius. He grabbed a bottle of vodka from the minibar and drank it straight. He had to fix this. He had to talk to her. He had to remind her of the good times. He fumbled for his phone and dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. You have reached the private line of Serafina Sterling. Please leave a message. Sarah, Dominic slurred into the phone. Sarah, please. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. I didn't know. If I knew you were a Sterling, I never would have. I never would have looked at Isabella. We can be a power couple. Think about it. Barros and Sterling. We could rule the world. Don't destroy me, Sarah. I'm the only one who really knows you. He hung up. 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a notification from his bank app. Alert. Joint account, ending in 8,890, has been closed. Remaining balance of $12.45 transferred to checking. Charme Yuan, Sishuwumefen. He was a billionaire on paper 3 days ago. Now he had enough for a sandwich. Desperation, cold and sharp, took over. He couldn't fight her in the boardroom. He couldn't fight her in the press. He had to fight her the only way he knew how dirty. He opened his laptop and logged into the dark web forum he had used years ago to dig up dirt on competitors. He found a contact, the cleaner, message. I need information on the Sterling family. Not the public stuff, the skeletons, anything illegal, anything embarrassing. I need leverage. The reply came instantly. The cleaner. Request denied. Dominic. I'll pay double. The cleaner. You don't understand. We don't touch the Sterlings. They own the servers we're chatting on. Run, kid. Run while you still have legs. Dominic stared at the screen. The fear wasn't just financial anymore. It was primal. He was fighting a god. The coffee in the styrofoam cup had gone cold an hour ago, but Dominic Barros didn't dare ask for a refill. He sat in the back booth of a 24-hour diner in Queens, the kind of place where the linoleum was sticky and the lights buzzed like trapped insects. He counted the crumpled bills on the table again. $4.17. 2 weeks. That's all it had taken for the boy king of tech to become a ghost. His assets had been frozen by the SEC. His credit cards were declined. His friends, the ones who drank his scotch and rode on his jet, had blocked his number. Even Isabella was gone, having fled to Paris with a suitcase full of his watches the moment the first subpoena arrived. Dominic caught his reflection in the darkened window. He looked deranged. His stubble had grown into a patchy, itch-inducing beard. His eyes were rimmed with red exhaustion. He was wearing a hoodie he'd bought at a thrift store because his bespoke suits were too conspicuous for sleeping on park benches. He wasn't just broke, he was erased, but he had one card left, a desperate Hail Mary play. He checked the cracked screen of his burner phone. Thursday. Serafina was a creature of habit. For 3 years, he had mocked her for it. Every third Thursday of the month, she drove to a run-down community center in the Bronx to teach coding to underprivileged girls. He used to call it her charity penance. He used to tell her she should just write a check and save the gas. Now, that habit was his only lifeline. He left the diner, pulling his hood up against the biting wind. The subway ride to the Bronx took forever, the train rattling like his own nerves. When he finally arrived, the sky opened up. A cold, miserable rain began to fall, soaking through his thin clothes within seconds. He stood in the alley across from the community center, shivering. He waited. At 8:15 p.m., the metal door of the center groaned open. Dominic's breath hitched. Serafina walked out. She was laughing. She was talking to an older woman, probably the center's director, and she looked radiant. She wore no makeup, just a simple raincoat and jeans, her hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked exactly like the woman he had married 3 years ago, the woman he had grown bored of. Seeing her smile, a genuine smile, not the polite mask she had worn during their divorce proceedings, ignited a flare of rage in his chest. How dare she be happy? How dare she thrive while he rotted? She waved goodbye to the woman and turned toward the parking lot. She didn't head for a limousine. She walked toward the same dented silver Honda she had driven during their marriage. Dominic stepped out of the shadows. Sarah. His voice was a croak, ravaged by cold air and lack of use. She stopped. She didn't jump. She didn't scream. She simply turned, her hand resting on the handle of her car door. Her eyes found him instantly, piercing through the rain and the dark. There was no fear in them, only a profound, crushing disappointment. Dominic, she said. Her voice was steady, cutting through the sound of the rain. You look terrible. You did this, he rasped, walking closer. His boots splashed in the puddles. You ruined me. I didn't do anything to you, Dom, she replied calmly. I simply stopped holding you up. You fell all on your own. You lied, he shouted, the desperation taking over. He was close enough now to see the rain droplets clinging to her eyelashes. You pretended to be nobody. You tricked me into signing that prenup. If I had known you were a sterling, if I had known who you really were. What? She interrupted, tilting her head. You would have loved me? You would have been a better husband? Yes. No, she said softly. You would have loved my name. You would have loved my connections. You would have loved what I could buy for you. You never loved me, Dominic. You loved the reflection of yourself you saw in my eyes when I looked at you with adoration. And the moment I stopped looking at you like a god, you threw me away. I was building an empire, Dominic pleaded, his hands shaking. I needed a partner who fit the part. I didn't know you were the one building it. That is exactly why you failed the test, she said. Test? Is that what our marriage was to you? A sick game? Life is a test, Dominic. Character is the exam. You cheated on every question. She turned back to her car. The dismissal was absolute. It broke something inside him. The arrogance that had fueled him for years, the belief that he was untouchable, shattered into panic. I won't let you leave. Dominic lunged for her, grabbing her wrist. You owe me. I gave you 3 years. You can't just leave me like a dog in the street. I am Dominic Barris. Let go of her. The voice didn't come from Serafina. It came from the darkness behind him. It was a voice like grinding gravel. Dominic spun around. 2 men stepped out of the alley shadows. They were massive, dressed in black tactical gear that was far too expensive for regular security. They moved with the silent, predatory grace of men who hurt people for a living. The rain seemed to bounce off them. I said, the first man repeated, stepping into the light. Release Miss Sterling. Dominic's hand sprang open. He stumbled back, slipping on the wet pavement and nearly falling. I was just talking to her. We're married. Well, we were. Serafina rubbed her wrist where he had grabbed her. She looked at him, and for the first time, Dominic saw the final death of whatever affection she had once held for him. The flame was out. There wasn't even smoke left. We were never really married, Dom, she said quietly. I was married to a potential version of you. You were married to a mirror. She opened her car door. Goodbye. Sarah, wait. Please. I have nothing. I can't survive this, he wailed, the tears finally mixing with the rain. You'll survive, she said. Most people do. She got in. The engine started. She didn't look back as she pulled out of the lot, the red taillights of the Honda fading into the rainy night like dying embers. Dominic stood alone with the two men. The larger of the two reached into his jacket. Dominic flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, the man pulled out a thick, waterproof envelope. He held it out. What is this? Dominic whispered. Severance, the guard said. Dominic took it. His trembling fingers opened the flap. Inside was a plane ticket and a sheet of paper with an address, one way, the guard explained, to Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha? Why Omaha? Miss Sterling has called in a favor, the guard said, a cruel smirk touching his lips. She secured you a position. Shift manager at a Tier 1 tech support call center. It pays $15 an hour. Dental kicks in after 6 months. Dominic stared at the man. I was a CEO. I was on the cover of Forbes. Not anymore, the guard said, his voice hard. Now, you're an entry-level employee with a bankruptcy record. This is the only job offer you're going to get in this country. I suggest you take it. And if I don't? The guard stepped closer, towering over him. The car to the airport is waiting around the corner. It leaves in 3 minutes. With or without you. If you miss it, well, the streets of New York are not kind to men with enemies. Dominic looked at the ticket. Omaha. He looked at the empty street where Serafina had vanished. He realized then that she hadn't just defeated him, she had dismantled him. She was giving him exactly what he had claimed to be when they met. A fresh start. A chance to build something from nothing. It was the cruelest punishment imaginable. He lowered his head, the rain plastering his hair to his skull. Where is the car? This way, Mr. Barros, the guard said, gesturing to the dark alley. This way. 1 year later. The fluorescent lights of the Omaha call center hummed with a sound that drilled directly into Dominic's skull. It was a low, electric buzz, distinct from the sleek silence of his old corner office in Manhattan. Here, the air smelled of stale coffee, carpet cleaner, and quiet desperation. Tech Solutions, this is Dave. How can I help you? Dominic said into his headset. My internet is out, a voice screamed in his ear. I'm losing money every second this is down. Do you know who I am? Dominic closed his eyes. He knew exactly who the man was. He was a nobody, just like the man answering the phone. I understand your frustration, sir, Dominic recited, from the script taped to his cubicle wall. Have you tried unplugging the router and waiting 10 seconds? Of course I did, you idiot. I want to speak to your manager. I'm afraid my manager is currently in a meeting, sir. Then fix it. What kind of incompetent company is this? Dominic stared at his screen. He could fix it. He could see the packet loss on the remote diagnostic tool. He knew exactly which port needed to be reset on the ISP side. He could write a script in 30 seconds that would automate this fix for the entire neighborhood. But he wasn't allowed to write scripts. He was level 1 support. He was Dave. I'm initiating a remote reboot, sir. Please hold. He clicked a button. He waited. He stared at the gray fabric of his cubicle wall. Pinned, there was a single picture, not of Isabella, not of Serafina, but of himself. It was a clipping from Forbes magazine, 3 years old. Dominic Barros, the boy king of tech. A supervisor walked by a 24-year-old kid named Tyler, who wore his polo shirt tucked in too tight. He tapped on Dominic's desk. Hey Dave, watch your handle times. You're averaging 6 minutes. Target is 4. The customer had a complex routing issue. Tyler, Dominic muttered, not looking up. I fixed it. Doesn't matter, Tyler said, popping a piece of gum. Protocol says, if it takes longer than 5, you escalate to level 2. Stick to the script, okay? We don't pay you to think. Tyler walked away. We don't pay you to think. Dominic felt a laugh bubbling up in his throat, bitter and sharp like bile. He used to pay people 10 times Tyler's salary just to fetch his coffee. He used to command rooms of senators. He used to be a visionary. Now, he was a metric. Lunch was at 12:30 p.m. sharp. Dominic took his brown paper bag to the break room. It was a grim room with vending machines that stole quarters and a TV mounted in the corner that was always tuned to the financial news network. Dominic sat alone. The other employees avoided him. They thought he was weird. The intense guy, they called him. The guy who thinks he's better than us. He unwrapped a ham sandwich. On the TV, the news anchor's voice cut through the chatter of the break room. And in our top story today, the tech world is holding its breath for the global unveiling of the Ether system. The revolutionary new quantum processing architecture is set to replace the current silicon standard within 5 years. Dominic stopped chewing. Aether. That was the name he had wanted for his project, the one Serafina had helped him with. The system is the brainchild of the newly rebranded Sterling Aurora Group, the anchor continued. And here to unveil it is the chairwoman and chief architect, Serafina Sterling. The room went quiet. Even the guys playing cards in the corner looked up. On the screen, Serafina walked onto a stage. She looked magnificent. She wasn't wearing the beige cardigans anymore. She wasn't wearing the aggressive high-fashion gowns of the gala either. She wore a white power suit, sharp, clean, and radiant. She looked like the future. She looked happy. The crowd on the TV roared. Thousands of people, flashing cameras. Serafina raised a hand, and the stadium went silent. Thank you, she said. Her voice was crystal clear. For years, the tech industry has been obsessed with speed, with flash, with the next big thing. We chased valuation over value. We chased image over integrity. Dominic leaned forward, his heart pounding against his ribs. It felt like she was looking through the camera lens, across the fiber optic cables, straight into the break room in Omaha. I learned the hard way, Serafina continued, pacing the stage, that you cannot build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. The Ether system isn't just code, it is a promise. A promise that technology serves humanity, not the ego of the creator. The screen shifted to show the specs of the new system. It was brilliant. It was elegant. It was exactly what Dominic had tried to build, but couldn't, because he lacked the discipline. He lacked the soul of the code. This system, Serafina said, was co-authored by the Sterling Foundation's new scholarship program. We found brilliant minds in places the industry usually ignores: single mothers, veterans, high school dropouts with a knack for logic. She smiled, that same smile she had given him in the lawyer's office, the smile of someone who had figured it out. We don't look for rock stars, she said. We look for partners. The camera cut to the audience. In the front row, Dominic saw familiar faces, his old VP of marketing, his old lead engineer, even Garrison, his old lawyer. They were all clapping. They all worked for her now. Then, the interviewer on stage asked a question. Miss Sterling, there are rumors that this project was initially conceived during your previous marriage to Dominic Barros. Is there any truth to that? The break room in Omaha went dead silent. Everyone turned to look at Dave, the weird guy who looked vaguely like the guy mentioned on TV. On the screen, Serafina paused. She didn't look angry. She didn't look bitter. She looked indifferent. Dominic Barros had a lot of ideas, Serafina said politely, but ideas are cheap. Execution is expensive. And character is priceless. She turned back to the audience. Next question. She dismissed him. She didn't destroy him. She didn't rant about him. She simply categorized him as a bad investment and moved on. That was the ultimate insult. He wasn't a villain in her story, he was a footnote. Dominic stared at the screen until the segment ended and the commercials for car insurance began. "Hey, Dave," a coworker named Lenny asked, chewing on a donut. "Didn't you say your last name was Barros?" Dominic looked at Lenny. He looked at the ham sandwich. He looked at the fluorescent lights. "No," Dominic said quietly. "My name is Dave. I just work here." He stood up, threw his unfinished sandwich in the trash, and walked back to his cubicle. His headset was blinking. Another call. He put it on. "Tech Solutions, this is Dave," he said, his voice flat. "Finally," a woman's voice screeched. "My printer is jammed and I have a flight to catch. Fix it." "I can certainly try to help with that, ma'am," Dominic said. He began to type. But as he typed, his hand brushed against the drawer of his desk. Inside, buried under a pile of training manuals, was the envelope the guard had given him that rainy night in New York. He had never opened the letter inside. He had only taken the ticket and the debit card. Curiosity, sudden and overwhelming, seized him. He pulled the envelope out. It was bent and coffee-stained. He tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of stationery. Heavy, cream-colored paper. The letterhead simply said, "Sterling." It was handwritten. "Dominic, you always asked why I didn't tell you. You thought it was a test. It wasn't. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you. The weight of my name is heavy. It crushes people who aren't ready for it. I thought if we built something real first, you would be strong enough to carry it with me. I was wrong. You didn't want to carry the weight. You just wanted to stand on top of it. I hope you find what you're looking for in the quiet. The noise never suited you anyway. Sarah, P.S. The A stood for Aletheia, Greek for truth. You never asked." Dominic stared at the word. Aletheia, truth. He looked at the screen, where the customer was yelling about her printer. For the first time in years, the noise in his head stopped. The frantic need to be admired, to be rich, to be someone, finally died. It had been starved to death in this cubicle. He looked at the script on the wall. "Ma'am," Dominic said, his voice finding a strange, new steadiness. "I know how to fix your printer, but first, take a breath. It's just a machine. It doesn't define your day." "Excuse me?" the woman sputtered. "Open the side tray," Dominic instructed, ignoring her outrage. "There's a small blue lever. It's hidden. You have to look for it." Oh, I see it. Pull it up. Gently. Okay. Oh, the paper came out. "There you go," Dominic said. "Wow. Thank you. You know, the other guys usually just tell me to turn it off and on." "I know," Dominic said. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. It wasn't a billionaire's smile. It was a human smile. "Have a safe flight." He disconnected the call. "Ready for the next one, Dave?" Tyler, the supervisor, called out from the aisle. Dominic Barros, the former king of tech, the man who had touched the sun and fallen to earth, adjusted his headset. "Ready," he said. And for the first time in his life, he meant it. Dominic spent the rest of his life in Omaha. He never became a billionaire again. He never appeared in magazines. He eventually became the manager of that call center, known for being kind to his employees and surprisingly patient with angry customers. He married a schoolteacher named Sarah, bought a modest house with a porch, and learned to grill burgers on Sundays. He was happy. Serafina changed the world. Her technology revolutionized medicine, communication, and education. She never remarried, though she was rarely alone, surrounded by friends, family, and a legacy that spanned continents. 2 lives, separated by a signature. One found power in truth. The other found peace in obscurity. And somewhere in a landfill in New Jersey, a bespoke Italian suit decomposed slowly, a relic of a man who had to lose everything to find the only thing that mattered: himself. He thought he was discarding a boring wife. He didn't realize he was declaring war on a dynasty. If you think you know how this divorce ends, think again. This isn't just a breakup, it's a corporate execution. Wow. That is the story of Serafina Sterling and Dominic Barros. It's a brutal reminder that in the game of life and business, you should never judge a book by its cover, or a wife by her cardigan. Dominic chased the illusion of value, the flash, the fame, the image, and missed the real value sitting right across the dinner table from him. It makes you wonder, how many of us are chasing the wrong things? How many of us are ignoring the Seraphinas in our lives because they don't look like what we think success should look like? I want to hear from you in the comments. Be honest. If you were Serafina, would you have helped Dominic one last time? Or did he deserve to end up in that cubicle? Was his punishment too harsh? Or was it exactly what he needed to finally become a decent human being? Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, karma, and hidden identities, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We drop new dramas, thrillers, and real-life inspired sagas every week. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you underestimate. The quietest person in the room is often the one holding all the cards. See you in the next video.